Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody's having a beautiful week. It has been absolutely beautiful here in Madeira Beach. If you don't know where Madeira Beach is, it's on the Gulf Coast. It's directly west from Tampa. I know most people think, well, Tampa's actually on the Gulf Coast. How could anybody be west of Tampa without being actually in the water? Well, if you look at a map, you'll see what I'm saying. I'm over here in Pinellas County. From my doorstep to the beach, it's exactly 200 steps. Just thought you should know. I've actually checked it. So however long that is in feet, it's 200 steps. But that's where we're broadcasting from. That's where I broadcast most of the time. Sometimes I go on location. When I go up to my parents' house in Pennsylvania, I have the ability to bring the equipment with me. And I will tell you that a couple times when I've gone out of town to disc golf tournaments, I will take my equipment with me, and I can do it remotely from hotel rooms. I've actually done shows from motel rooms, which is kind of cool. But we're just here, regular stuff here in Madeira Beach today. You know, it's funny. I'll give you an idea of what Madeira Beach is like. And this is the second time this has happened. And it's not because I'm senile. Last night, I left my car door open all night. I'd been over at my parents' place, and I had brought some things back over from their place, and I had them in the back seat, took everything inside, and forgot that I left my passenger side door open. It's a 4-door sedan. I drive a Taurus. And I left that left front door, the driver's side door open, the driver's door open. I get up this morning, and there it is, just hanging open. Go in. Nothing's been taken. Nothing's been fooled with. And my car sits right on the street. Right on the street. So every car going by, anybody going by, saw the door was open. Nobody messed with my car. This is the second time this has happened. Now, why does this happen? Because for some reason, the interior light and the dinger, like if you have your keys in the ignition, it doesn't work. So when I get in my car, no light turns on. When I put the key in the ignition, no buzzer comes on. And it's been like that since I owned this car. But I did this before, I'm going to say a couple months ago. I actually left 2 doors of my car open under the very, very similar circumstances. Once again, nothing happened. And I have like cash in the glove compartment, and it was all still there. So Madeira Beach, very calm, sleepy, tiny little place out here. I just have to remember to lock my doors. It's just a weird quirk about this car that those warning devices don't work. It's the only car in my life that I've had, and I've driven tons of cars, and I've owned a lot of cars. So it's just weird. Let's get to the show. You know, I was going to talk about this yesterday, but I ran out of time. By the way, I'm going to try to stay away from Trump and Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz stuff, although I may get into it a little bit at the end because we do have a debate tonight. I'm, of course, recording this before the debate's happening. I was in my writers group on Tuesday night, and I think this story goes along with the story I was telling you on Monday about how I believe the conservative media has used Donald Trump as a way to get revenge on people that the conservative media believes is wronged over the last 20 years. And I told you the Mark Stein story. You can go back and check that. That was from Monday's show, which I believe was, the 10th, 9th, 8th, the 7th, March 7th show. You'll hear me talk about that there. This kind of story is very similar, and we're going to go off on get a little away from politics. Just want to talk about faith, religion, atheism, and the fight that it has been having primarily in the United States. I think this was a good example of that. Now, you know what I think about atheism. I have necessarily no problem with it. The only problem that I think of that pops into my mind when I think about atheists, that I know that atheists, more than any other ideology killed more people than anybody. And that was a weird sentence, wasn't it? Atheists killed more people than any other ideological group in the 20th century. Between the Chinese, the Nazis, the North Koreans, the Soviet Union, the Eastern Bloc countries, the East Germans, all of them, all atheist countries, all run by atheists, they killed millions and millions of people on purpose. On purpose. Purges, executions, you name it. Concentration camps, everything. And so that's my concern about atheism. Is that atheism, pretty much you have people in your life who are atheists, don't believe in God, don't believe, just when you die, it's just like you go nowhere. You can get along with them. It's just, it seems, when they get into positions of power, how things start to go the wrong way. It seems. Not to say that there haven't been religious leaders who've killed people, but in the 20th century up until today, starting in 1901 to today, atheists have killed more people than anybody. It's not even close. So I met my writers group, and we all get along really well. I'm new to the writers group, but there was a guy, and I know him to be a good writer. He had read the last couple times I went there from this murder mystery, quality writing. Well, on Tuesday night, he decided that he wasn't going to read his book. He was done reading the book for us and us critiquing it. He was going to read this little short film script that he has, like a page and a half long, something like that, not even 2 pages. And it was something that he's thinking about filming with images, with some dialogue. And before he read it, he warned us that, it has a particular point of view. He says, I don't believe in God. And, and me as a believer, I can handle it. But this thing was so over the top, saying to the point that God is bad. I mean, just using analogy of a porcupine. And you could tell, and like I said, this guy's a quality writer. But it was obvious to me that he took such great pride in making fun of people who believe God is good that he couldn't see that really the thing sucks. All right? It was a really weird situation because, like I said, there was like 13 of us, and we all get along fairly well. But when he read that, and he was looking for a critique on it, there were several people in the group who said, nah, I can't say anything. You could tell a lot of people were upset. All right? Believers, Christians, whoever else. There may be some Jewish people there. We don't talk religion, so I don't know. But probably it got to me, and I actually tried to give him some good advice. And I told him, hey, I'm a believer. You want to make any film you want, go ahead. But I told him it's probably a little bit too much red meat. I just don't know who, I said, forgive the pun, but, it kind of feels like you're just preaching to the choir on this. And I could tell that, you just got the idea that it wasn't so much a work of art that he wanted to create. It was just something that he wanted to do to tick religious people off. Because it was so blatantly, weird. Like I said, it was something about God is bad, and he drew this analogy of the writer from his own life and killing this porcupine, and the 2 porcupines or something. It was so bizarre. And and this is a group where there are a lot of quality writers in it, and the people who bring their work to be read, work on it quite a while before they bring it to get critiqued from this group. This guy, it felt like it just came right off the hot press. But it just showed me once again that these atheists, they just can't help themselves. Now, I'm going to tell you, in 45 years of being on this earth and being in entertainment for the last 15, 16 years through filmmaking and stage shows, live shows, magic shows, Rat Pack shows, writing, everything else, I have never heard one Christian say that I want to make some film, I want to write something and make fun of atheists and how wrong they are. I have never heard that. Never. And in fact, in my next book, The Comebacks, which I mention every time I do this show, there is quite a bit in it about religion. And there are religious people who are having lack of faith, and I have atheists who are like finding faith. I think I treat the topic somewhat fairly because I believe that's the way life is. There are people who have faith who are losing it all the time and then gaining it somewhere down the road. It's always weird to me that, for example, in my high school class, I know a lot of people, my kids in my class, never went to church, nothing. I mean, I was an altar boy. I played the church organ from as little as I could be. I was involved in the Catholic Church until I graduated from high school. And I knew a bunch of people who were never into it. But now these days, I can see them on Facebook talking about God bless you and taking their kids to church. So people change. Likewise, there's very religious people who lose their faith, leave the church, leave their denomination, convert from one religion to another. We as humans are going all over the place on a daily basis regarding our faith. So when you see something like, so I tried to do that way in my book because I believe that's the way people are. But this guy, who I know is a good writer, I think he just threw that all out the window and just wanted to blast us with his point of view. And I could tell, even though he prefaced it by saying, hey, I know this is like, anti-religious piece, but I wanted to get your idea. I could tell that when the critiques were being dished out, and I could even tell by the way he was responding to me, which I thought I was fairly nice. I was just telling him, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. It just seems like a little bit too much red meat. I told him, I wrote some anti-government novels, and, you just have to tone it down. So I tried to help him out. I don't know how well he reacted to it. But it was so self-righteous that I could not believe it. And it just seems to me that when I experience these people, it's once again, it reinforces my beliefs about what is really going on under the surface. It's not that they think that atheism and Christianity or any other religion can cohabitate and get along well together. Really, it's just that they think we're stupid. They think we're stupid. And if they have a chance to say something, do something, they're going to do it to make fun of us. Whereas I don't know that goes on our side. I know that me personally, I feel sorry for atheists. Maybe that's why I don't make fun of them. I just state the facts regarding how they're killers. But I don't make fun of them. And in fact, I wouldn't even bring up Christianity or any sort of faith to any of these people. So it was just, like I said, it's kind of like, it is kind of like liberalism, and we know a lot of liberals are atheists, and likewise there are a lot of conservatives who are atheists. With liberals, it's a situation where they seem so nice, and once again, to scratch the surface. They're all get along, go along to get along. believing in peace and everything else. You scratch the surface, and all of a sudden, it's government's going to make people do this, government's going to make people do that, and if they don't believe in climate change, we're going to send them to jail. If they want to own their guns, we're going to send them to jail, on and on and on. But if you just meet them in casual conversation, they seem like the most rational people in the world. They allegedly don't believe in force and making people do stuff, and then the first thing that comes out of their mouth when you push them on something is, well, a person should be in jail. A person should be fined. $37,000 a day if it's the EPA. And that's why you can't give these people any power. And it's also the reason with atheists that I don't think you can give them any power. As much as I am a fan of Ayn Rand for her work that she has done for, in her work when she was writing, before she died, of course, on the perils, the dangers of big government. But I've often said, what I know about Ayn Rand is if she were alive today, she'd still be an atheist, but I don't think she would take the attitude toward people who believe in God the way atheists do today. Of thinking that we're idiots and we're cultists and things like that. She called people who believed in God, she called them mystics. That's what I got out of her reading. But, she died in the early 80s. And frankly, atheism has become more popular in the United States in the last 30 years. And it's also become more militant. Dare I say it. So, I was sitting there and I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is the kind of guy who wants the 10 Commandments out of the courtrooms and doesn't want any prayers said at sporting events and thinks, oh, I get it. Oh, this is that type of person. Oh, I get it. Okay. What atheists tend to forget is that most of our lives, public lives, have nothing to do with religion. Although we have our faith, the going to work, doing whatever, there's not much of that involved. In fact, you could say that 95% of our life is somewhat non-religious. And what I mean by that is you are making decisions based on the expectations from somebody else. There's no prayer books around. There's no Bibles around. There's no 10 Commandments on the wall. There's no prayer. There's no communion. There's no confession. It's just you going about your daily public life. So in that way, 95% of our lives, at least, are somewhat atheistic. And really what atheists are trying to do is to try to get that other 5%. Never do atheists understand that for the most part, they get their way 95% of the time because 95% of people's lives have nothing to do with religion. But most of the time, they're not praying, they're just doing other things. But atheists don't see it that way, and that's why they continue to attack us. So it was just, I said, as soon as I heard him reading, I said, I think I'm going to have to put that on the show. I think I'm going to have to talk about it. There's just something about them when they start thinking about their atheism and have to put it into some sort of words. It's not a defense of the way they think. It's more an attack on the way we think. So that was very enlightening. And if you're an atheist out there, I'm not trying to offend you. Unfortunately, these are the types of circumstances that I continue to have just in my, once again, somewhat anecdotal, but they reinforce a worldview I have already, that I've had for maybe ever. But down deep, atheists kinda are, they just, how do I put this? They can be nasty people. All right? I know that we as believers. Our religions had their nasty times, decades, centuries ago. And we got through that. We got through that, although we're not perfect. It seems like atheism is just getting to its militant era. So, and that this guy just felt free to read this, not understanding, not reading it and saying, you know what, maybe this is a little much, tells me something. We should have seen some people just walked out. Some people, as soon as he was done, they walked out. It was the last reading of the night anyway, I guess. But as soon as he was done, we didn't even get around to the circle of a couple of these people before they just, walked right out. Because I know what those people are thinking. If they're believers like I am, they're thinking, you know what, I would never come in here and make fun of atheists. I would never do that. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't do it. And this guy did it anyway. I guess that's what happens when you have a belief system that, it's hard to derive morals from atheism, right? So there's that. Let's move on to something else. They had this guy, this is from Sky News, who defected out of ISIS, got frustrated with it, didn't like that the Ba'athist Party, which was Saddam Hussein's old political party in Iraq, had worked its way into the higher level management, I guess you want to call it, of ISIS. And this guy got frustrated, and on his way out, he took with him a thumb drive or something like that of a list of all or of many ISIS soldiers, not just in the Middle East, but around the world, in the United Kingdom, on mainland Europe, in Canada, and the United States. And he has now turned that into authorities, and this reporter from Sky News got to interview him. And there was just a couple things. I guess there was thousands of jihadis on the list. And what's funny to me about this, it's not funny, being that there are thousands and you now have this list. Hopefully they're going to act on it in some way. Maybe some of these guys are already dead, but the ones who are still alive, kind of living in secret, hopefully they can use this list to hunt them down. But the funny part, there's a funny part to this. And you don't normally think about terrorist groups or a terrorist group that's taking over a certain area of a country. You certainly don't think of them this way, but the guy said that anybody who wanted to, the way he even got this information, that it was even on a computer anywhere. Because, the way I think of it is, for example, like the Mission Impossible movies with Tom Cruise, or any kind of spy movie like that, where the good guy has to go and get this list of all the bad guys. And it's on a computer disk. It's underground behind an electric fence, and they're guard dogs, and he has to figure out how to get in there. Normally, and I like those types of movies, but I'm thinking to myself, there surely isn't a list like that in real life. Right? You wouldn't necessarily think that you could go somewhere and find a list of a lot of members of ISIS. Who would write that down? Isn't it sort of just like a guy shows up in the Middle East, proves somehow that he's Muslim. Maybe he has to kill one of their prisoners to show that he's loyal. And that shouldn't be about it. Shouldn't even ask his name, right? Well, I guess not. Because what we find out from this defector is that to get into ISIS, you have to fill out a 23 question form. And it doesn't go into what the questions are, but can you imagine that? You're in England, you want to be a part of ISIS, you want to go into the Middle East, you want to fight Assad, you want to fight the Russians, you want to fight the Iraqis, you want to fight the Americans if we ever get our butts involved, you want to fight the Iranians, you want to pillage, you want to rape, you want to behead, everything else. You get in there and you go up to some guy, yeah, I'm here, I'm ready to, give me a gun, give me an AK, I'm ready to work. And the guy says, no. First of all, could you please sit down and fill out this 23-question form? After you traveled thousands of miles to do this, you think it's some rogue organization, and they're asking you questions. How corporate of them. I mean, do you get the old interview and like the ride along too? You go out with one of these ISIS guys to make sure, well, before you want to get involved in this job, maybe you should go with one of our experienced, mature ISIS fighters, see what we do, see how we behead, and see if you really, really want to be involved with this. I think back to my days of when I was getting hired to work at 7-Eleven, still the worst job that I ever had as a field consultant. Went in, had the interview, and the next process is I had to ride around with one of the field consultants just so I understood what the job was. I should have stopped right there. When I saw what the job was, I should have said, nah, this isn't for me. Unfortunately, I did, and I ruined like 10 months of my life. But I wonder if that's what it's like with ISIS. We'll go along with Abdul Aziz Abdul Muhammad. How about you go out in this truck with them with the machine gun on the back? You can ride around, see if you like it. If you like it, come back, let us know. And then we'll get you the black garb, we'll get you the mask, we'll get you your AK, we'll give you a knife, and in case you need to behead anybody, you'll be prepared for that. We'll give you all the tools of the trade, but we want to make sure that you like it first. I know that I'm being somewhat sarcastic with this, but it just shows you what a bunch of fools these guys are, and all of them should have been dead years ago. Years ago. So there's that part of it, but there's another part of it, and this is kind of what, maybe this is the downside of this story, because it seems like a good story. Hey, we got this list of these, we got these names, we're going to be able to go after these people, and as you can imagine, on a 23-question form, they do ask these guys, well, what was your prior address? I mean, really, it's like a business, it's like a resume. It's a job application. Let's just call it what it is. It was a job application. First name, last name, address, phone number, relatives, contacts, your emergency information, if you get injured in battle, so we know who to call, all that stuff. And it's all on this database in this file that this guy stole. However, this guy who stole this also said, and this kind of flies in the face of what we have been told in the United States. He claims that ISIS, the Kurdish YPG, which we just know as the Kurds who are allegedly fighting against ISIS, and Assad. So ISIS, the Kurds, and Assad, this Defector claims, are working together against the Syrian opposition. Now, what do you think about that? Because if you don't know, what we've been told in the United States is that the Kurds are fighting against ISIS. They're fighting against Assad. That ISIS wants to take over and kill Assad and wants to get its hands on all of Syria. But now this guy's saying that that's not the way it is at all. That there may be some colluding to defeat what they seem to have a common enemy. And it should be noted in this article that the Russians weren't mentioned really that much, despite this being a news story about ISIS and Assad and the Kurds and everything going on over there. So that's what caught my eyes. It was like this great article. Well, I wonder what they're going to do with it. Wonder how they're going to use this information. And then you get to the bottom third, and this part comes out. And what was weird about it, and I'll link to it through my Twitter feed later today, or sometime today, that you'll see that the writer who did the story did not even put a question mark next to that. Now, down in the comments section of the Sky News article, they did. Some commenters made, well, really, those All those groups are working together. I thought they were fighting each other. And I found this story, as I remember, through hotair.com. And on the comments section on Hot Air, they said the same thing. Wait a minute. So I don't know what to think of that. Because it's just there in black and white, and the way it's reported is if everybody knew this already, whereas we in the United States have been told something else, how the Kurds are so brave and we should arm them. Well, maybe we should take another look at that, see if this Defector story is true. Because if that is true, what does that mean about the information? Or it's not true, what does that mean about the information? Maybe the information isn't true. Maybe this is just a big scam. Which is possible. I have to think about that. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Real radio for real Americans. Red State Talk Radio.
This is Brigitte Gabrielle from actforamerica.org. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not go to bed every night absolutely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place, then you're simply not working hard enough. Arm yourself with knowledge so that you too can act for America by listening to Red State Talk Radio. Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. RedStateTalkRadio.com. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
I can't defend my family because I live in Chicago.
I am free to defend my family with my AR-15 or handgun because I live in Wyoming.
I can't even protect myself if I'm attacked because I live in D.C.
I carry my 9mm in my purse anywhere I go in Texas.
I can't protect my small retail shop here in Brooklyn.
We keep guns behind the counter at our shop in Oklahoma. Only had to show it once.
Do you see a pattern?
Demand equal gun rights in America. Go to SAF.org now.
My name is Courtney Luster. I'm 21, well-educated, and unemployed American. I happen to be black, so I'm in the highest unemployment segment of the population, black youth unemployment. Notice I don't refer to myself as African American because I'm an American first. I'm a proud American who happens to have black skin. So please explain to me where African American fits into that equation. You're right, it doesn't. For over 60 years, the Democrat Party has used my fellow black Americans to maintain power in the federal and state governments. Why do I say that? Because I read history. While many of my friends are watching mindless videos, I choose to listen to Red State Talk Radio. Why? Because I want to educate myself, not entertain myself. Red State Talk Radio, America's premier conservative talk radio network. Hey, all you black American youth, be a Frederick Douglass Republican, not an Al Sharpton race pimp. Educate yourself. Listen to RedStateTalkRadio.com.
This is Michael Cutler, retired senior special agent with the former INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service. You should know that I'm also a lifelong Democrat, but ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. That's why, despite being a lifelong Democrat, I listen to Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
We're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I had a chance yesterday to finally talk with this good friend of mine that I always seem to be referencing a lot recently, especially when the concern is Donald Trump and what's going on with the GOP and who's going to win. I had a chance to talk to him yesterday for about, I'm going to say, an hour and a half. We had some telephone issues, reception issues within that, but it totaled up to about an hour and a half. It's probably the longest political discussion I've had one-on-one with somebody for a decently long time. I've been on other shows on Red State Talk Radio, but it's it's kind of a different situation. This is more conversational. And, of course, this guy and I have been friends for 27 years, and he was the guy who originally got me into political watching in the first place, taking an interest in it. And it's interesting because he and I have a lot of the same ideas about what should be going on in the United States, but he is not as anti-Trump as I am. And I don't think that, let's put it this way, I don't think that I'm going to be able to change his mind between now and whatever. He lives in New Jersey, so their primary isn't until quite a ways from now. I don't know if it'll even mean anything. And he would never vote for Trump in the primaries anyway. But in the general election, if Trump is the candidate on the Republican side, he's going to go vote for him. And there's nothing I can say to this guy that's going to change that. And likewise, there's nothing he's going to say to me that's going to change my mind either. But we did talk about that a little bit. And it essentially just comes down to, and I'm going to try, by the way, I'm going to try to have him on the show. I need to figure out the logistics of recording an interview with him. So I think it'll be interesting because you always just hear me talk to you. You might be interesting for you to hear me talk to somebody else. And it wouldn't be so much an interview, but a conversation. It wouldn't be like I'm having some political writer on here to ask him or her about her, a book or something like that. But it might allow you to see some interaction between me and somebody else, and I think that would be good. But essentially comes down to, hey, it's Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, and in that selection, it's a pretty easy choice. Likewise, this friend of mine believes that there may be a lot of what Donald Trump is saying that isn't true. That he's just saying it for effect, like yesterday, the day before, he said, I'm the most presidential guy since Abraham Lincoln. Now, it depends on your point of view whether he thinks that or not. Is he saying that just to be outrageous? Or do you think that he means it? Or do you actually believe it? I guess there's three different corners you can be in. Me, I think that he actually thinks that about himself. My buddy, he thinks essentially that, he just says some of these things. He gets on a roll. And sometimes you just can't. Now, we didn't talk about that specific circumstance, but I've given him some examples of that before, and he is more likely to blow some of that stuff off as just being Donald Trump being Donald Trump. The real question is those people out there who look at Donald Trump and actually think, yeah, I like what he said, and I believe it. He is the most presidential since Abraham Lincoln. And that's where I think a lot of where his supporters are in their minds, and that's what's so scary about the whole thing. My friend did give a prediction regarding what could happen, and he thinks that Donald Trump's just going to win the nomination outright. He's going to get to that 1,237 delegate number before the primary season's over, and that'll be it. I was not as pessimistic as he was. I think that Donald Trump's going to fall short of that, but hey, what do I know? I'm a conservative. I'm not a political scientist. I haven't even sat down and looked at what each state's delegate counts are from now till the end, or what are winner-take-all states and what are proportional states. So I'm just doing, I'm sure there's a little bit of hoping in there instead of more truth in there. We did talk about, what's interesting to me is this guy, he's been involved in corporate tax work, and that's where his expertise lies. And he was, and I don't want to get the industry he's in, but his company got together with some others at some conference and people sitting around a table, and there was like somebody there from the government. I don't exactly know how it came about, but I asked him about corporate tax rates. And we as conservatives, we get crazy because of the tax rates for corporations in the United States being some of the highest in the world. And my friend brought up a very good point. That when our tax rates, the current tax rates, were enacted, our idea of what the United States should have as tax rates went back to the 80s. Our tax rates, our corporate tax rates, were some of the lowest in the world. And that's what one of the things that spurred so much investment in the United States and that economic boom that we had from the early 80s up until the housing problem in the mid-2000s. It was one of the reasons. The problem that's happened, this was interesting to me. He was telling me this because I didn't know some of this. And this is the exact reason I wanted to talk to this friend of mine. That what has happened since then is that other countries, the EU, Japan, other places, saw what was going on in the United States. Well, what have they done? They've slowly, gradually over the years, they've lowered their tax rates, their corporate tax rates, to the point where they're much lower than ours. So while ours were staying the same, it's not like our corporate tax rate has gone up, 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 and past all of theirs. It's the opposite. Ours has stayed the same, and everybody else dropped theirs. My buddy also pointed out, and this is something that we have to remember, our attitude toward taxes in the United States is a little bit different than most other industrialized countries in that we don't tax the individual very much. And say what you may say about United States tax rates, they suck. We as conservatives think we still take too much from people. But compared to what people get taken out of their checks in Europe and elsewhere, it's not a lot. Our tax rates don't touch what other countries do to their citizens. However, those other countries don't tax their corporations very much. We try to tax business in this country a lot, sometimes succeeding, sometimes not succeeding. So you see, the United States, in contrast to other countries, we get there in different ways on how we want to finance government. Elsewhere, they believe in high individual tax rates, low business tax rates. United States, low individual rates, high business taxes. All right, that's part of this. So that's how the corporate tax rate in the United States got to where it is. It didn't move. It's just everybody passed us up by going lower, by theirs going lower. The other point of this is that there have been times, once again, this is fascinating to me, where talk about lowering the tax rate, what my friend would say is his understanding and the dealings that he had with the corporations he's worked for and local government officials regarding taxes is that the truth is these government officials really technically have no problem with lowering corporate tax rates. The problem is that that's just the general rate. The problem is that the government instead would want to raise something else. So a corporation wouldn't get a tax break for doing this. Those tax breaks would go away, but their overall tax rate would go down. And with these corporations, the choice they continue to make is, well, if that's the case, we just, if we have to make a choice between a high tax rate, we get all these tax breaks, or we have a lower overall corporate tax rate and we get tax and we don't get the tax breaks, we'll take the tax breaks with the higher corporate rate. Which is interesting to me, and we didn't go into a deep discussion of why, why that is. But I thought that was interesting as well. So, of course, we as conservatives, we would like just the corporate tax rate to come down and everything to stay the same. We think that would cause a lot of economic growth. And if you believe in the Laffer curve, we happen to believe that by lowering that tax rate would cause more business to be produced. Thus, through sales taxes, other things, government makes money, and you wouldn't have to change those tax break rules. But we're not at that point. And right now, that's maybe a too sophisticated argument to make. And frankly, a lot of liberals blow that argument off. And frankly, there's not enough Republicans who understand it. So it was, but he, this friend of mine who, his company, the last company he worked for was international, wasn't just the United States company. It's involved in the United States and in Europe. He said there's a stark difference between the two, and the attitude of tax rates between the company doing business in Europe and the company doing business in the United States. So I thought that was interesting in talking to him well, and especially considering that is something, a topic that he's been involved in for a while, like 15 years or something like that. And in fact, I know that not in this conversation, but other conversations I've had with him, he's sat in some meetings with representatives and senators who showed up to talk about what's going on. Maybe it is. I don't think it was a fundraising event, but kind of maybe a little bit of a schmoozy event, something like that. So he's gotten to go to a couple of those. And so that's always interesting to me because I never have an opportunity to do any of that stuff, and I don't even know if I would go if I did. But there was that. And talked about conservatism and how, what did we do wrong? And so I hope to have him on the show so you can hear us talk about this. Maybe he and I will get into some other issues as well because, like I said, he doesn't do politics every day like I do, but I've known him for all these years, and I know that he's politically astute. And we think a lot the same on a lot of issues, but we differ just enough that I think hearing a conversation between us would prove interesting. So I'm going to try to make that happen. Let's move on to something else. We have a debate tonight. This probably will be, by the time you hear this, the debate, I think, will be over. Where's it happening? It's happening here in Miami. It's happening in the state of Florida. How about that? I don't live near Miami. It's like 4 hours away, but yeah, it's in Florida. This probably is going to be the last debate, at least I'm hoping so, that you'll have more than two people on stage. I think by the time, and I don't even know when the next debate is scheduled, that things will shake out. I'm going to just tell you, as a resident of Florida, having lived here for 4.5 years, I just do not see Marco Rubio winning the state. I just don't. And what that means is a Trump win, and I think that will be enough to cause Marco Rubio to drop out. There's been rumors flying all over the place, even yesterday when I was talking to this friend of mine, that Marco Rubio's people, he's thinking about suspending his campaign, and Jeb Bush is out there trying to rally the troops together, talk to each of these guys about their intentions. Who knows what's going on there? A lot of rumors flying around. Even Major Garrett, who is part of the mainstream media, but a guy I respect. He used to be on Fox News years ago. Guy I respect. Seems like a good guy. Seems like a guy who wants to look for the truth, is going to tell his viewers, his listeners, the way it is. He was tweeting about that yesterday, that Marco Rubio seemed to be on his last leg. But there's no signs of that. I know today, see all sorts of ads on all sorts of stories of where he's going, what he's doing. However, somebody I read somewhere on my Twitter feed or something, it certainly does have that stench of Ben Carson, though. That he's saying, remember, Ben Carson, I have every reason, as long as people send money to me, I have a responsibility to stay in this race. And then 4 days later, he's dropping out. This is kind of what that feels like. Marco Rubio, I think if we look back at this, now watch, he'll come in, he'll win Florida, get 55 delegates, and he'll be alive again. You just watch. The mistake, I mean, people are going to talk about Marco Rubio and the mistake that happened in New Hampshire. He had a bad debate, and that hurt him up there. Okay, so he finishes maybe one spot better than he did in New Hampshire. Does that really make that big of a difference? Maybe it hurt him a little in South Carolina. Maybe. I think the problem was that he couldn't execute the plan that he wanted. This 3-2-1 plan, come in third in Iowa, second in New Hampshire, first in South Carolina. He couldn't do that. And he did not recover from it very well. Whereas Ted Cruz, the talk was that he had this firewall of the SEC primary, and if he doesn't do well, then he's screwed. Well, he definitely underperformed there, but he found a way to stay in the game and right his ship to the point where he continues to win states, and he's the only guy that's giving Donald Trump a challenge. And I think it also hurt Marco Rubio that he did not have the infrastructure in some of these states. You can't go through Tuesday with getting no delegates, but that's what he did. You can't do that. Especially considering that that's a week before your home state. Now, whoever caused that to happen, and remember, this isn't all on Marco Rubio. This is on the people that he assigned to plan these things and all the money that he raised and volunteers and everything else. You can't do that. You have to be looking, okay, Florida is March 15th. A week before that, we have Hawaii, Idaho, Mississippi, and whatever the other state was. And maybe we have to think about maybe winning one of these. If nothing else, we have to come in second, and we have to get some delegates to show that, hey, we're in this still. The week before his own state, couldn't do it. Didn't do it. Maybe he had a plan to do it. Whatever it was, wasn't very good. Whereas it seems in Ted Cruz's case that he can continue to win delegates, win states, even though not so long ago he kind of underperformed as well. And then there's John Kasich, who got 17 delegates somehow. Seemingly out of the blue on Tuesday, Marco Rubio couldn't get one. So I think that when this is over, and who knows what will happen after Tuesday. Hey, there's even stories that'll drop out before Tuesday, but some of the votes are already, cast here in Florida. A lot of people probably already voted for him. So even if he dropped out and said, you need to vote for Ted Cruz, I don't even know how much of an effect that would have now. So there's that. And that's why, once again, like yesterday, I said that this early voting stuff really can mess things up. I think if we didn't have early voting, it very well may be that Marco Rubio drops out. Maybe. Much more likely. But he has to be thinking, well, all these people already voted for me, and I need to stick this out. I think that's what's going through his head. The debate, though, I think this is the last one you're going to see with these guys. I don't think maybe John Kasich wins Ohio, and then he's sticking around, and we have to listen to him for another month. But the odds are this is the last debate with 4 people. It's going to be the last debate with 3 people even on stage, at least 3. It'll be 2. I just don't know, and I talked about this with my friend yesterday. I just don't know if there are enough states yet, enough good states for Ted Cruz I think he can win some of these states heads up against Donald Trump. I just don't know if it's enough to catch Donald Trump, and I could just hope that it's enough to keep Donald Trump from getting that 1,237 number. Getting very, very close to that line, that V1 airplane takeoff speed that I talked about last week. At the point of you pass it, there's no return. So you can go back and listen to that show from last week. But I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. edwarddentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at Podomatic, Podbean, YouTube, and SoundCloud. edwarddentzel.com/book is where you find the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. You can download it for free. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight and listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.